Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Tuesday. It is 3 p.m. ET, and you have found us here at Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. And we are so pleased that you are here today. I am your host, USA Today bestselling author Hank Phillippi Ryan, author of 13 going on 14 novels of suspense. My current novel is Her Perfect Life, which is displayed on the door behind me, and my new one coming up in 3 weeks is The House Guest. I think I have it right here. I'll show you. The House Guest. Look at that, which just got a starred review from Library Journal calling it binge-worthy. So that's a good thing, and I am really happy about that. It's sort of Gaslight meets Thelma and Louise. But talk about binge-worthy. You all. Today, you can see all my little bookmarks in this. Today, we welcome Deepti Kapoor, the author of Age of Vice. And if you have not seen this book yet, where have you been? This is, I almost said awesome. I can't even, when Deepti and I were talking before the show, I tried to tell her how much I loved it. And I just couldn't find any words to tell her how much I loved it. It's immersive and propulsive and heartbreaking and heartrending. And the setting is so, I could not put this down. I was trying to read it as fast as I possibly could to find out what happened. But I couldn't because it's so gorgeous and so unique and so epic that I just had to slow down and soak it all up. The words and the style and the story and the themes and the setting. And now I'm going to stop talking and let Deepti talk for a minute, but I got to show you. So the book arrived. And welcome everyone. Look who's all here. Sharon is here, and Shannon and Lynn is here, and Janine is here, and Renee is here. Oh. Shannon Hansen says the book looks fantastic. So before I let Deepti talk, I want to show you this. So I get this box in the mail.
Oh, we got that. Yeah.
And it's huge and eye-catching and gorgeous. And it says on it, "This is the most insanely bingeable literary fiction I've read, maybe ever." And I'm thinking, oh my golly. And that's from Michaela at Invitation Bookstore in Gig Harbor, Washington. So I think, whoa, what is this? Is a big deal. So I open it up. Look at this box, you all. I open it up, and there is more praise on the inside. Do you have one of these, Deepti?
I do. I got sent a box too. And well, first, thank you, Hank. I mean, that was just an incredible introduction. I feel so deeply appreciated by.
Well, you know, this is,
it makes me so happy when I hear all this. So thank you.
Yeah. Oh, my pleasure. I mean, I can't wait to talk to you about this, and I promise I'll let you talk. I know it's so crazy, but I just want to show everybody who's here. And oh my golly, here's Karen and Sharon and Susie Baldwin. Look at the inside of this box. And then I'll show you this later. But then this gorgeous treasure of a book, Age of Vice by Deepti Kapoor. It is a GMA pick. It was an instant New York Times bestseller. Deepti comes to us today from Lisbon. Mm-hmm. What is your life like right now? I gotta say, I can't even imagine.
It's pretty hectic. I was in New York last week, and then I followed it just for 2 days. Unfortunately, it feels very wrong to be in New York just for 2 days, especially when you live in Europe and you want to go to New York all the time and get all the art and culture in. But I went to Paris straight after. I had my book launched. It's French edition. I had the French. They gave me an incredible party in a nightclub, actually. So that was fun. And they felt it would tie in with the themes of the novel. And and there's, loads of press and all of that. I am off to Jaipur for the Jaipur Literature Festival on the weekend. And then I come back to Lisbon, and then I go to Madrid the following weekend. And that's it for January. Yeah. I mean, and then there's February and March, but it calms down.
And you went to New York that you leaded over as the Good Morning America book pick.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's such a huge deal and
Yeah.
such an honor. Who told you about that, and what did you think?
Oh, it's really interesting. I think it was my publishers. I think it was my editor, Sarah McCura, and she sent me a message, an email, and I was walking somewhere in the city. And I love walking, and I think I remember just looking at the email and being stunned, and just very, very thrilled and excited. And it was a long time back, and I was told that I cannot tell anyone about it. Like, no one can know, because if anyone gets to know, if it gets out, it's not going to happen. So I had to keep quiet, and the only person I told was my mother, because she won't tell anyone. Yeah. And she's not on any social media either.
And you didn't tell your husband?
Oh yeah. I mean, obviously he knows.
And the cone of silence.
Yeah. My mother and my husband. Yeah.
I mean, this is such and we'll talk about this in a minute too. This is such a big, different book. Mm-hmm. It's an amazing amalgam of commercial fiction and literary fiction. I mean, I really think it's Dickensian. And when you all read it, and I know you will, I wonder if you think that too. What would you call it?
That's really interesting, because I was thinking about that today. So many people some people are calling it a thriller. Some are saying it's a crime novel. Some are saying it's a literary thriller. And I think it is definitely very thrilling and propulsive. And I would say it's a social novel about, and that's where, when you say Dickensian, I say, okay, yes, that's a comparison that I would be very happy to take. Because it is a social novel about the psychic wounds done to a people, a city, a country. And it's also, having said that, it's also a thriller. It's a political thriller, because it's about politics and corruption and crime and criminals and mafias. It's also it's just a study of atomized of individuals living in an atomized age. It's a study of India, an examination of a society that transitions very rapidly from a very kind of a socialist economy to a capitalist one, and how money is and millionaires are created overnight, and there's this decadence and wealth and privilege at one end, and it's all built on a sort of foundation of poverty and suffering and misery, and we're living in this world of tragic interdependence and extremities, and it's trying to kind of like figure this world out. So it's all these things.
That is fascinating, trying to figure this world out. It's complex, but not complicated. It's so immersive, and I love how you began. You take us into this huge seething world, with the tiniest opening, with the tiniest after the prologue, the tiniest little personal beginning. And we were talking about this earlier, and I'll introduce the show in a minute, and I'll introduce Deepti in a minute, but you somehow have managed to tell this epic story with all of that you said, through the most specific, detailed of eyes. How do you think about balancing that, AJ character, for instance, and then you see, from in that point of view? Talk about that kind of writing, why you did it that way.
That's an interesting question. Why I did it that way, and why I started with Ajay. Now that goes back to me figuring out how to write this novel. I had a lot of stories. I was a journalist in my 20s in Delhi, and I had a lot of stories from that time. And I knew a lot of wealthy people. So I kind of initially had an idea to write a sort of Delhi Gatsby about the lives of the rich, and how they, the damage that they do and inflict on other people, and then they retreat behind their wealth. And then that felt, it just felt like it wasn't enough, because when I started to think about writing about the rich, I very soon realized that I wanted to write about inequality, because
Yes, because when you write about the rich,
yeah,
they're only rich because of poor people.
yeah, and inequality and complicity, moral complicity, the moral complicity of even people like me and the middle class, the compromise. I wanted to, in a way, even indict myself. I'm not a character in the novel, but I kind of witnessed the lives of the rich, and I remember that the novel still wasn't coming to me until I met Ajay, of course, he's the heart of the novel. I met the person who inspired the character of Ajay when I was traveling in the mountains. I was living in a guest house, and I met a young boy. The story of loss, of having to being sent away by his family to work for this couple, and he was, despite his loss, he was just so full of hopefulness and optimism and love. And I knew at that point of time that I could take his story and then combine it with the story of all the young men that I used to see working in these private mansions in Delhi, especially late at night when you had these big Gatsby-like parties. And that's when the novel was born. And then I also wanted to make it quite propulsive and thrilling. So I was broke at the time, and I needed to write something. And now I think, writing novels rarely gives you enough money to live on. I mean,
maybe not the best thing to.
Yeah, no. And now I think, oh gosh, was I really thinking that? It worked, but it's not something I would advise anyone to do. But why don't I start it with a car crash? That's what my thought was. And how about, and if the wrong person is blamed and goes to jail, and then you circle around that event from, different perspectives until you come to the truth. And then it's not so much, a mystery because you know who's done it, as much as the why. Why have people behaved like this? What kind of society do we live in that enables this behavior? And that's what I was interested in answering.
It's so just inspirationally educational to hear how this came from. When I think about you meeting someone who's like him, and what a classic character he has become, what an iconic character, with his trying to help people and do good things, and surviving beyond anything that any of us could possibly actually imagine having happened to us, and not just completely giving up. We're talking about Age of Vice, the blockbuster novel by Deepti Kapoor that is just out. It is absolutely incredible. Let me tell you very, very quickly. I always forget. I'm not going to forget. We are giving away a copy. Deepti and her publisher are giving away a copy of Age of Vice to one super lucky commenter. So leave applause, leave a question, leave about Deepti's research or writing process, or just say you're fabulous, or how was Paris, or whatever you want, and you'll be entered to win a copy of Age of Vice. We will spin the wheel of fun at the end of the show, and you will win. So do not forget to leave a question or a comment for Deepti, and we will get to those at the end of the show. Quickly, you should know Deepti Kapoor grew up in northern India and worked for several years as a journalist in Delhi, as she said. The author of the novel Bad Character, she now lives in Portugal with her husband, and that's where she is right now, in that beautiful golden yellow room in the evening in Portugal, where it's about 8:15 or something like that p.m.
That's right, Hank. Yeah.
And if you don't know, let me quickly tell you about Mighty Blaze. Mighty Blaze was founded at the beginning of the pandemic, so almost 3 years ago now, ridiculously, by the fabulous powerhouse duo of Jenna Blum and Caroline Levitt, to keep us learning about new books and bring us together and let us talk about books and expand our community. And wow, 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 that has brought you today Age of Vice by Deepti Kapoor. One of the things I hear, and I've heard several times about this book, is The Godfather meets Succession in India.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, wow, yeah? Or do you think, well, no, it's my book. It's not any of those things. How do you respond to that? I mean, it's a great comparison, and it's kind of perfect. But what do you think?
That's a really interesting question, because I sometimes I feel, like, oh yeah, okay, Godfather meets Succession, and sometimes I'm like, no, it's not. it's its own novel set in a very specific world. And I think it's sometimes useful for readers who come to something completely new to see what it is and how you can compare it to something. But sometimes that backfires because you have, maybe it has, of course, there's the family, who are kind of like gangsters and also businessmen. So similar to The Godfather, there is a very a strong father-son dynamic, also similar to The Godfather or Succession. But it is about other things as well, and it's about poverty and corruption and political corruption and mafias, and so it is. India is an extremely specific setting and place, and I have based it in that social reality. So I guess the comparisons are okay if it. I mean, I don't know if it brings people to the book, but then if they think, oh no, it's not, then it becomes kind of a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, I understand what you're saying about the last thing you want someone to think is, oh, that's not what I expected. So you set this thing up to not succeed. Well, this succeeds on every level. Everybody loves The Godfather and everybody loves Succession, and it's really the point of what it's about. But I want to talk to you about power and fate and family and setting and entertainment and civilization and what people do to each other. I love what you're talking about, psychic damage, this pounding and pounding and pounding of what your place in society is. Let's talk about power. This is such a book about power. Tell me how you think about that and whether that's a theme and why.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's all like one of the most overriding themes of Age of Vice is power and the abuse of power. And I think that's really important. How do men, or specifically because this is a very masculine world, how do they get power, and how do they wield it? And that's interesting because you're talking about the relationship between power and the state, because government, the corruption that we see in India specifically, or in that point of time, that I've drawn on some real life, is where the collusion between the state and, say, businessmen enabled a certain kind of society to thrive, and that's basically, I'm talking about crony capitalism. And I'm also talking about manipulation and coercion, because you have extremely powerful men. You have Banti Vadia, who will not cede control and power at any time, and then you have his son Sonny, who isn't as ruthless as his father, but who wants his power. And that's the tension between this dynamic that is so interesting to explore.
And it's getting the power and it's wanting the power, deciding if you want that, then getting it and deciding how you'll get it. And then the sort of drunken necessity of needing to keep it, that once you have it, what you have to do to someone else to make sure you're always on top. And that
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've totally got it. How do you getting that power and then keeping it, and then making sure, and also someone trying, and once you have that one person who has all the power, everyone else is trying to wrest, that control and power, which also means money, at least in anywhere and everywhere, but especially in the India of the post liberalization, which started in the late 90s, and then just the economy exploded, and how people made money and how they used power, and how that money gave them a lot of power. So,
I mean, and we're talking very thematically here, you all, about the age of Vice, but I don't want to, and I'm looking to see, here's Lynn, and here's Pamela Fry-Priest, and Karen Seaman is here, and the Tickles are here. I love this, Susie Baldwin. Wonderful that all of you are here today, and don't forget to leave a question for Deepti Kapoor about the age of Vice, and you may win a copy of it, not this one, because I'm definitely keeping it. But thematically, yes, it's brilliant, and we'll talk about that a lot more, but it's also such a good story, Deepti. It is such a good story told in such a fascinating kind of way. How much of the story did you know as you were writing it, or did it blossom and bloom to you as well?
Oh yeah, no, I don't outline. So I kind of knew the start, and then I went from there. It's my writing process can be quite chaotic and often unpredictable, where I start off with an idea, and then suddenly, and sometimes and sometimes those ideas just take their own turns, and my subconscious comes in the way. So there's kind of like my characters are become sentient beings, and they do things that are unexpected, and that also changes the shape and direction of the story. So of course, you have the idea that you're going to be telling the story of the car crash from different perspectives, but then you're also telling the story of the city. And you have Neda's eyes and Neda's point of view, and she's explaining the world. But the final third, and I don't want to give anything away, was unexpected for me, because it was almost like I had this subconscious impulse to introduce a character late in the third act, and it was almost something I couldn't help. I had to do it.
Well, honestly, I felt that. When I turned and started reading that part, and this won't hurt, you'll be surprised too. There's nothing we can say that will give this away. We will not do that, and it wouldn't really anyway. But let's just say, I thought this is not even Deepti. This is somebody else talking here. I mean, the lilt of the voice and the way that the way that it was presented was almost scary, and I say that in the most complimentary of way. Talk a little bit about. I mean, did you become? How did that come out?
It was literally like something that just struck me, I think, because I was in a writing residency in France, in a small little town called Saint-Nazaire, and this character just came at me, and obviously he's based on a lot of newspaper reports and people, you read about these crazy,
Things.
people who are and of course they don't come from nowhere, and the land is and this is what actually I want to say. It's like there's Delhi, which is where you think all the action is unfolding in Delhi, and it's called Age of Vice, but really the real vice is happening just bordering Delhi. It's in UP, where everything is happening, the violence, the real violence, which is also where Ajay comes from, so I wanted to bring that other land in to the world of Delhi, which feels, at least on the face of it, quite civilized. So
that uncivilized edge, that sort of fraying uncivilized edge that's leaching into the city and into everyone's lives is so apparent in Age of Vice. It is so cinematic. The setting is just, you can smell it, you can see it, you can feel it, the dust and the heat and the how do you channel that? I mean, I know in these interviews that you do, and you must have done a million of them, and people are always saying, well, how do you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. So, but
this is there you go. It's instinct so much. Hank, how do you do it?
So, but just talk about setting. Why was it important for you to give us Delhi and then to give us these other places and UP and things that many of us have never thought about really delving into? Why was it important to you, and how do you bring that to life so gorgeously?
Well, I think I think visually, I think in images, and then I translate them to text, and I think that helps certainly. I just I myself am influenced by writers who evoke a strong sense of place, and that I think is just that for me. Sometimes plot is second to setting in place. Like if someone can just conjure a city, or not just a city, a place anywhere, especially a place I haven't been to, and I can feel it, through the writing. It just makes me so happy, and if I can do that to someone else, then that's even better. I mean,
there's an apartment that I know that I would know if I saw it. There's a bar that I know I would know. There was a house that I know that I would know. A bus that I know that I would know.
Yeah.
And that's really It's really extraordinary. We're talking about Age of Ice by Deepti Kapoor. Let's talk about family too. I mean, the
Absolutely.
wanting a family, whether it's a found family or a real family, is so much a part of this as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's Ajay, and I think that's the most interesting dynamic because he's basically orphaned, and when he finds Sunny, who he just kind of like latches onto, and he's becomes his most loyal, able servant. What does Ajay really want? Ajay is looking for a father figure. Ajay is looking for just family. You know, he's looking to belong to someone, to something. And I was just so interested in exploring that relationship because it's such an asymmetric relationship, because you have Sunny who doesn't care, you know he's just a guy. For Sunny, Ajay is the perfect servant who executes everything, all his wants. Even before Sunny knows that what he wants, Ajay is there. And that's, so it's like Ajay's love for Sunny is not is not given back by Sunny, but it's also because, and then the family aspect, like let's go to Sunny and his father, Sunny
Yeah.
and Bunty, because that's really interesting. You have Sunny trying to please his father, coming from a pretty emotionally, I'd say, poor
Mhm.
um, family background. He doesn't get much love. He hasn't grown up in a loving home, and and basically all his father wants from him is for him to be ruthless. It's like a business, His father just wants someone who could be like him, and Sunny just wants his father's love. So yeah, so there's all these different kinds of bonds and familial bonds. And then you have Nether's family, who are so loving. And so, her father is just this big, beautiful, lovable bear of a man who will just give anything for his daughter. So, it was also interesting to have these different kind of bonds, or to show these different kind of relationships.
Fascinating to read. And the thing that I also thought about it is how you've intertwined the idea of, if you want to be someone or something else, can you do that? Or, I mean, or is it fate? I mean, is there just nothing you can do to make your life be different from how it was? I mean, there's a scene that I think you could talk about, if your addled brain can remember, when Ajay goes into a shopping mall.
Oh yeah, I love that scene. So yeah.
Yeah, I did too. It was so heartbreaking and so revelatory, if maybe incorrectly, to him. Talk a little bit about why you did that, if you can.
Yeah. Okay. So this also comes back to, I remember when the first big luxury shopping malls opened in Delhi, there used to be people who didn't look a certain way or behave a certain way, um, weren't allowed to go in. There'd be these big guards, like bouncers guarding the entrance. And it was, there's a big class divide. Clearly it was just like people of a certain class could enter. And then there was also the idea that, there could be a foreigner, a tourist who was wearing rags, and they'd have no problem getting in because, they're mostly white people. So there was all that race as angle as well. And I thought it would be really interesting because now Ajay is learning how to be a certain kind of man, and he's learning how to please Sunny, but also to be Sunny. He's
Mhm.
Ajay in his head, and he goes to this mall, and then the crushing sense of, like, I don't belong anymore because he doesn't. They see who he is and they don't let him in. I mean, it's interesting because it's talking about ambition, but it's also talking about, can you leave your past behind? Because India is such a deeply casteist society, but it's also a place where the liberalization had brought a certain moment where you could cast off your identities and become someone else or become someone new, and there was more social mobility. But for someone like Ajay, not. In the end, he's just so expendable, and that's just the tragedy of his character.
Yeah, just so expendable. That's incredibly touching. And the idea of this, that there's something bigger that's keeping you where you randomly, maybe, because of how the universe is, where you randomly wound up being, that you lived in this town instead of this town, or had these parents instead of these parents, and you inevitably wind up in a certain way. Do you and we're going to get to your questions. Look how many people are here. That's marvelous. I'm seeing Janine and Renee asking a million questions, and Darlene. And we'll get to those in about 2 minutes. Do you think about people reading this book? I mean, it's always so odd to think of all these people listening today, and people you don't even know who are, and the book reviewer for the New York Times who adores it, and the Washington Post, Ron Charles, who adores it. And you worked on this thing for so long, and then what?
Oh God, yeah, it's been years since, I was writing it, then I was working with my editor, then, pandemic happened, so everything kind of slowed down with the publishing, and now it's out there in the world, and I really have no control over how it's received, and that is, terrifying as well. It's like and at the same time, I think there's a certain level, at some point you just have to say, okay, I'm just going to step back and be zen and just let this take its own course. I mean, how do you do it? And you published.
Well, I think authors are neurotic, and I think that we worry.
Yeah.
I think that if someone was your best friend, they might say to you, look at this, you succeeded. This is great. Everyone loves it. Don't forget to be happy about this, because you struggled and worried and worked and were clearly inspired by something, whatever happened, something clicked, and you've changed the world for people. You just have. So when people tell you that, how do you feel about that?
I feel great, to be honest. I feel really happy if someone tells me that, for those many hours that they were immersed in this world, that they were thrilled by it, or it was just such an immersive reading experience. That's I hear that word a lot. It's very immersive, and that you once you start open the book, you can't stop reading, and then you're done and it's over. And then I think it's important that everyone just takes a step back and thinks about it, and says, okay, this is, because it's a thriller, it's a political thriller, but it's also a novel about power and corruption and inequality. So I if you can weave those themes into your reading experience, it's what David Simon said about how readers want ice cream, or what viewers, I guess, but they need broccoli, So I always think about that. You get like broccoli and ice cream in the same meal.
And you do have broccoli and ice cream in this meal, and the broccoli is delicious and lasting, and the ice cream is amazing and tantalizing, and you always want more. There's just no question about it. And I remember at the end of the book, I closed the book and I thought, I just will never look at people the same way again. It's just such a window into someone else's point of view and what someone else might want and what battles they may be fighting, as people always talk about. It's quite amazing. So congratulations on this. We're talking about Age of Vice by Deepti Kapoor, and we'll take some of your questions right now. If Bosie in the back room will pop them up for me, or I can look to. How would you like the book to be perceived, says Janine.
Oh, okay. How would I like the book to be? I mean, we just spoke about this. I would like it to be, I would say it's a social novel, and it's a novel that's propulsive and entertaining and thrilling, but it's also a novel that addresses many larger themes, and if you can take both of those in. So, go into it with a big open mind.
I love that. I think that, I was thinking about the title, and I was thinking about how just, if you put a template of what the title means, then that it's what it's supposed to mean. But if you let yourself just be in the book and have it mean what you think it means, that's also kind of wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Renee is asking, do you ever miss living in India?
Oh gosh, yes, all the time. And I've been here for 4 years, but we go back a lot. And I live in I miss the food a lot. But we live in a very immigrant part of the city, with lots of Nepalis around us and South Asians. So I feel very much at home here. Like I have some of the best food, especially Nepali food. But yeah, I miss the textures and the smells and the sounds. I miss the sound of Delhi, of India, actually. Just like when you, even sitting here in Lisbon, you can hear the train horns sometimes, and you can hear the traffic sounds and the noises and the birds, the thousands of birds. So yeah, totally miss India. But also living in Lisbon helped me, I think, be more radical in my writing, because radical. Yeah, I had a lot of India in me, and I just feel like if I hadn't been outside India, I might not have approached the novel the way I did. So
just in 2 seconds, what do you mean radical? Brave?
Yeah, I think brave, because I had ideas. I obviously wanted to communicate, but maybe if I was living in India while writing this, I might not have done them in the way I did. It's like I decided I just wanted to put everything out there. And maybe that came from being here, away from it. That came from being away from India.
And also it makes you see it in a different way. Now if you're in gorgeous, amazing Lisbon, looking into India, emotionally, mentally, then you're seeing what you left and seeing what it really was.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it really helps.
Janine is asking a really critical question that I love to hear the answer to. Do you have a clean desk or a messy desk?
Oh gosh, it is. I wish I could show you. No, a messy desk. It's a pretty messy desk, and there's coffee cups and books, lots of different books. There's lots of academic research papers that I read for writing, and I'm working on the second in the trilogy. And there's this old this is, again, reminds me of India, and I play it when I want to relax. Is this? It's a Shruti box. It's a music box, so it plays this very amazing sound, like a drone. You can only find it in certain shops in India. It's a classical Indian sound
box. Is it something you can pick up and show us?
Yeah, let me see, and maybe I can even play it for you. Oh gosh, no, I can't.
It's underneath all the coffee cups.
Let me try and see if I can. If the power is on.
Oh.
Yeah, can you hear that? It's a drone, and it's an Indian classical.
Yeah. Oh, does that just take you away? It seems like it would just.
It's extremely hypnotic, and you can just. I write to this a lot, so.
That explains something to me.
Yeah.
I have to say. Have you ever heard of the
switch off now? Yeah.
Throat Singers of Tuva?
No.
Look that up when this is over, because I don't want to go there, but it's pretty. Okay. Throat Singers of Tuva.
Okay.
Karen is saying, as you were sort of alluding to, I understand this is book one of a trilogy. Is this correct?
Yes. I just found that I had so much more to say, and the characters weren't done yet, and I wasn't done with them. So it's going to go.
That is fantastic. We are not done with this either. We are so glad that there will be Age of Vice 2, or even more Age of Vice, or whatever you're going to call it. I hope you'll come back and talk with us about it here. Shall we give away a copy of your book?
Yes, please.
All right. So you're going to see the Wheel of Fun. It's going to be amazing. Here we go. Let's spin the Wheel of Fun and see who wins. We could be playing your music through this. That would be great.
Oh, that would be. Maybe I could play it.
And the winner is Darlene McElhaney.
Oh, hey, Darlene.
Wonderful. Darlene, you will love this.
Oh,
and Darlene is it. Go ahead.
No, I'm Darlene. I'm really happy you won the book.
And she is a veteran of Crime Time, so we're thrilled to send that to her.
Okay, even better. Yeah.
We are really running out of time, Deepti, and we're so grateful that you came today. Any thoughts, any last thoughts? I don't want to put you on the spot, for the audience that came today and for your readers.
I just really appreciate, Hank, your time and your love for the book, but also everyone who came. It's still a working day. It's the middle of the day, and you came to basically listen to me, and that's great. Thank you for being there.
Our pleasure. And do not miss Age of Vice by Deepti Kapoor. Everybody who's not Darlene, go out and get a copy of this book, and clear your calendars and calling Hollywood, because this would be an astonishing movie. But again, let me say, it's a book, and read it as a book and make the movie in your mind, because the movie in your mind will just be amazing. Now, don't you think that's...
Yeah, I totally always subscribe to that. Always. It should always be in your mind. When you're reading it, it's its own film. And then later on, if someone adapts it, that's different.
Right. And you can watch it a different way, but when you read it, it becomes yours.
Totally.
And this is a wonderful thing. Let me pause you for a second, and you all do not move, or else you have about 15 minutes to get a cup of tea or wine if it's late enough for you. On 4 o'clock on Crime Time today, we will hear from Mary Kubica, whose blockbuster Just the Nicest Couple is just out, and it is twisty and immersive in a different kind of way, very suburban US, and domestic thriller with a twist and another twist and another twist. So come back and hear the fabulous Mary Kubica in about 15 minutes. Or if you have something else to do, I'm now looking at my desk for where I put next week's book. Next Tuesday at 4 p.m., we will have Iris Yamashita and her new City Under One Roof, which I'm about to read. It says, "Live together, die alone." So clearly it's a comedy, ladies and gentlemen. And we will read this thriller and talk about it next week with Iris Yamashita. Until then, or until 4 o'clock today for Mary Kubica, thank you, Deepti, for joining us today.
Thanks a ton.
You are fabulous and brilliant, and congratulations on everything. And to all of you, we'll see you either in 15 minutes or in 7 days. And until then, remember, it is always safe inside a book. Thank you so much for coming.